Today we're going to be working on something that's really a big challenge for a lot of us entrepreneurial-minded people. Last month we focused heavily on the identity of ourselves and our business and our business identity in the community. And now one of the interesting components of being an entrepreneur is if you have a desire to grow and develop your business, you need to standardize some things and delegate some things, and it's hard. Part of it's hard for mental reasons. We don't think anyone can do it like we can do it, and part of it's hard just because it's what we're good at. So we don't necessarily want to give up those responsibilities. But there was a book that came out, gosh, I guess I can look at the original printing of it, but called The E-Myth. And then the E-Myth has been revisited and revisited several times. So the concept is generally this. If you have to be in your business for your business to operate, you don't own a business, you own a job.
Amen.
And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today.
Or it owns you.
Or it owns you, even worse, right? When it's got you running around, but certainly something very interesting. So before we get started, we'll go ahead and pray and get things rolling. Mike, do you mind getting started?
Father, thank you for the opportunity to come together and master our businesses so we represent you well in the marketplace. Father, as we discuss these ideas today, just ask that you would give every one of us here your ears to hear. Father, give us wisdom and show us what you're trying to teach us in the way that we apply these ideas. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mike. I think one of the things that I get asked often when I tell people that I have a couple of different things that I do is how do you keep up? And I keep up just like everybody else does. I have a calendar and I schedule things and just like everybody else does. The difference is I have a lot of other people that do so much. So oftentimes it'll be a question of, hey, can we get this done? And the question comes to me. And I'll bring someone else in the fold and say, okay, hey, my senior accountant Jen is going to go ahead and handle that for you. So let me make that connection and then it's off my plate. Because I know I've got a very quality person there, and then all around my team is really about that. I had the opportunity over the last couple of years to build a team out of California for a laboratory company that I took over operation for at the beginning of COVID, and we went from 72 employees to 1,400 employees in 2 years. Unfortunately, we're in the process of scaling that back now to probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 employees, but it's part of the process. And how does that happen? The first thought process had to be who's going to do what, because there was absolutely no way I could do everything. And so as we go through this little presentation today that I put together, got a small clip of kind of the Cliff Notes of the E-Myth book in it, and we'll kind of just get started into it. So I kind of call this standard operating piece. And I called it that because I think the reality is as we go through this process, that's what you're looking for. You decided to go out on your own, you decided to open up your own business, or you're in that entrepreneurial journey of getting there, and as you're getting there, it can be really challenging. And this, to me, was one of the biggest changes that I had to make in order to start to grow and start to actually accomplish what it was I set out to do, which wasn't, I didn't want to go from my job to a job. And that's what I had done, the first several years of business. Hi, I'm David, and I had to do everything on my own. So it was just really like that, and it's really unfortunate because I didn't even know this mindset existed. I just thought that's what you did. You just work really hard and you become successful. And yes, you still need to work hard and you still need to accomplish things, but you need to work hard at different things than what oftentimes you think about as you start to scale your company, if you desire to do that. So this was that Michael Gerber quote, if your business depends on you for it to operate, you don't own a business, you own a job. The images behind this presentation I chose was the restaurant business. Because I think if we look at the businesses that are most important to standardize, that's one of them. Ray Kroc saw something when he saw the McDonald's brand when he was out there, and it was the standardization, it wasn't the quality of the food. I don't know that the quality of the food ever has been McDonald's forefront of what they're trying to accomplish, right? So, hey, there's a couple things I like over here. The fries, right? They're good, right? When they're fresh, yeah, they're pricey. The dollar drinks, right?
Their fish sandwich.
Their fish sandwich, okay, we got a fish sandwich. Cassie, if you don't mind passing around the roster, we'll take orders, and then we'll...
So, I'm going to leave that here.
Okay. But it is what it is. They were just really stinking good at standardizing process. And he saw that and said, oh my gosh, I could create 100 of these, and we could make 100 times the money that one store makes if we were able to standardize these things, and he did. I think one of the big contentions, I don't know if any of you have seen the movie, but one of the big contentions was going from real ice cream to powdered ice cream, and you know, the customers don't seem to care. So, you know, they just, so long as it was the same every time. And so,
Powdered ice cream.
right, powdered ice cream.
Just giving me more reasons not to go.
There you go. That's right. If the grandkids ask you to go, you'll show up, right? Mm-hmm. So it is what it is. But the restaurant business is one of those that if we were to say, this is my favorite restaurant, probably one of the reasons is that consistency. Food consistency, service consistency, even the consistency of the Cheers concept. When I go there, they know me. We were talking a week or two ago about Amore, and how the owner walks around and he gets to know people and how he intentionally does that. And that's part of the consistency, because if I went there and had a meal that wasn't great, I'd still go back because I know Alfred, you know, or at least I think I do, because he seems to know me, so that's pretty cool stuff.
Sorry.
So all the
It's an alarm. I didn't turn it on speaker.
somebody wake Cassie up. But so we've got a few challenges that we've got to overcome in order to start changing this. And the first one I put on there was the owner's mindset. You know, some of the things that we might say are no employees think like an owner. You know, how many times you walk by a piece of paper in the hall and nobody picks it up but the owner of the company, right? And those kind of things. No one can do it as good as I can. Oftentimes we're in business because we are really good at what we do. And so I've had the pleasure of sitting in Mateos's chair and getting a haircut. He's really stinking good at what he does. And man, I felt good after leaving the chair. I don't know if I looked a whole lot better, but hey, I think so, right? And I felt like I did. And so getting out of there, it was like, wow, this is a great experience. I'm gonna go back for that. And it'd be very difficult, I think, for Mateos to put another barber in his chair to say, oh, you handle the haircuts for now, because that's what he does. I don't have time to teach is another, probably the number one barrier once you get past the mindset that you do need to do that. The employee mindset, oftentimes we have a perception, and oftentimes they have a perception. One of the perceptions is they're just here for a paycheck. And I have some of those employees from time to time that don't last long with us, but they show up and they just need a paycheck, and that's why they got the job to begin with. They're limited in the work that they're trusted with. Oftentimes employees leave an environment because they're not challenged enough, or they feel like the owner won't give up something that they feel that they can make a big difference on and help with. I don't want to step on any toes. How many times do we hear that? How many of you you work in corporate? Well, you have a pretty tight team though, right? But I think.
Well, we got a whole big structure that you gotta go through. It's a cumbersome process, we'll just say.
Right. Have you ever had a time when you've not spoken up about something because you were afraid you were gonna step on someone's toes, or?
All the time.
All the time, right? And what a shame, right? If our culture and our businesses don't allow our employees to speak up and provide good feedback, man, that's a shame, right? Because that means that oftentimes we have some good stuff. Now, there's a way to go about it. There's a way to even train them on how to go about it and the right times to do that. Last thing you need is a team meeting for someone to throw their gripes on the table and tell you all the things you're doing wrong, you know, but there's certainly a way for them to interact that way. And so part of what we need to build is we're changing our mindset as a culture of change and inclusion. Financials. This is another challenge. I can't tell you how many entrepreneurs I get the chance to work with who are afraid to scale because of their financial outcome. And so they don't have a budget for training and automation, and they can never find a way to do that. One of the other thought processes is back to the mindset, is the thought process of this is a new expense, not an investment. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Time and priorities is the last thing that I think that as we're looking, if we do have the ability to automate some things in our business, the next thing is really, can we set up the time to do that? You know, because it's super important for us to be able to say, I'm too busy in the business to work on the business, and that's really where we got to go back and say, well, what role am I supposed to be playing? I'm supposed to be the CEO. The only thing I should get myself to the point of doing at some point is working on the business and growing that business. If we love doing what we're doing, and I think about doctors as a good example, they can't stop practicing medicine or doctoring, whatever we call it, but they have to do something at some point in time and dedicate time to specifically working on how is their practice business doing, not just how is their practice doing. So, some solutions. We need to shift our mindset a little bit. One of the things that I think is extremely important, and it's worked very well for me, is an actual documentation of what I'm trying to accomplish. Sometimes we don't have that in focus, so we don't even know why we'd be doing this. So if we say, hey, I want to grow my company by 25% this year, and you can quantify that, then you start to say, okay, now what resources do I need to get there? We need to reinforce the expectations of working smarter, not harder, and place those in your vision every day. I think it's important also that if your goal is to grow 25%, your team should know that. You should know that. You should put it on your computer monitor in a small note in the corner of your computer monitor. You should put it in your car. You should put it in your wallet. You should put it on your mirror at home when you get ready in the morning so that you can remind yourself of that goal. And I even believe that saying it out loud sometimes is extremely beneficial. The other thing is setting realistic expectations, right? So if we have a plan, one of the challenges we often face is that we think everyone should operate and do things the way we do them. And we need to leave a little room for latitude because we're good at what we do because we went through those things already. Some things we can train. If this, then that. You know, if the washer breaks down at the chute, here's who you call, what you do, how you offset. Even sometimes, it's disappointing to do it, but I've even written standard, we call them disappointment emails. We're sorry that we're going to disappoint you. This isn't after the fact, this is before the fact. But we're gonna miss your deadline for these reasons. And by sending it out proactively, 99% of the people are like, no problem, I'm good. If they're not, they let us know and then we prioritize their stuff. We can shift that around and we can make a difference. But we've already standardized that. So if you see one of those notes come back and it says, hey, I'm so sorry, but we're going to disappoint you. This is what's going on and this is our fix and this is the timeline that's changed. People are cool.
So just set the bar as low as possible.
That's right. Set the bar really low, and then yeah, that way you're apologizing in advance. Well, sorry for doing business with us, right? Right. But really, getting that stuff set up prevents you from being as nervous about handing those types of responsibilities off. And then sometimes people make mistakes, and we just have to be prepared for that, so that when that happens, we don't immediately retract. You know, one of the interesting things is I get to teach Financial Peace University. The first baby step is to save a small emergency fund. And we talk about the reason for that emergency fund is one simple reason. And so we don't go back to the habit of using credit to pay for our emergencies. And I think about that in business as well. We shouldn't have to go back to saying no one else can do it like I do because we didn't plan for that mistake to occur, and we need to be prepared for that. Yes, we need to coach our team. Yes, some people don't fit in the model, whatever it is. But in the meantime, that shouldn't be the reason we don't grow and develop a team in order to solve those problems. Scheduling and prioritization. We've talked a lot about this, and I've started to really implement this, although this is one of the hardest things for me to do, is really moving things off of a list and into a schedule. If you believe that this is important and you're trying to scale your company, then absolutely put some times on your schedule that you're gonna work through these things and get them done. And so it works out really well that way, and you'll get them done. If you have to change it for another priority that's higher, then move it, don't erase it, you know, keep it going.
So I would say, like, if you got a whiteboard, if by the time you have these priorities set, you can't erase it anymore, it took too long to do it.
That's right, that's right.
That's a compelling thing for me. If I can't erase it, I'm like, dang, I don't know, I didn't do that.
That's right.
What I like is Outlook on reminders. Outlook,
Oh, yes.
Outlook had an upgrade. I don't know if it was the last one or a couple before, but now you can drag them to morning, afternoon, and evening, and then you can prioritize them within that.
Mm-hmm.
I take time to do that every morning, and then at lunchtime you shuffle it around to see how your day's going. You may have to shuffle, but it's so nice morning, afternoon, and evening.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
It really is. So we're gonna watch a quick clip on kind of the cliff notes of the E-Myth and kind of set the tone for the rest of our discussion today. So we're gonna work on that.
Mark, did you hear all that?
Should you ditch your boss and start a business? If you already know how to produce a product or service people pay for, why not build a business around it? Let's say you're an awesome graphic designer and you work in a graphic design studio. You know people love your designs, so you decide to start your own graphic design company. You start with a few existing clients. They recommend a few more clients. Soon you're busy and you don't have a boss anymore. Life's great. You feel like a kid on the first day of summer after a long school year. But soon you're putting in 14-hour days to do the design work and all the other little things you need to do to keep the business running. After a few weeks of working these 14-hour days, you decide you need to hire an experienced administrative assistant to deal with all the administrative work you don't want to do. You also decide to hire an experienced marketer to do the marketing work you don't have time to do. You trust that these experienced people will know what they need to do because they've worked in similar positions in the past. Now you've got people doing the work you don't want to do, and you can focus on what you do best, producing beautiful graphic designs. But just when you think it's going well, your administrative assistant leaves, and what's worse, she's put all your financial data in a software program you're not familiar with. It's a complete disaster. And on top of that, the marketing person you hired isn't producing ads the way you want them. You decide to let him go and do the marketing yourself. Now you need to put in 18-hour days to clean up the mess and do the backlog of design work. Your projects start to suffer, deadlines get missed, quality drops, and clients are getting pissed off. You thought when you started your business, you got rid of your boss, but now it feels like you have a boss again, and this boss doesn't give you a day off and barely gives you enough money to pay rent. How did you get yourself into this mess? You're in this mess because you built a business that relies on you. In the book, The E-Myth Revisited, author Michael Gerber says if your business depends on you, you don't own a business, you have a job, and it's the worst job in the world. The top priority for a business owner is to create a business that produces a great product or service without them. In other words, an entrepreneur doesn't produce a product or service. An entrepreneur creates a system that produces a great product or service and removes themselves from the process. If you own a bakery, you don't want to bake the best cakes in town. You want to build a system and hire people to bake the best cakes in town. Your goal is to build a cake baking system that allows ordinary people to produce extraordinary results. So how do you build a business of systems and hire people to operate those systems without you? It all starts the moment you decide to start a business. You start by asking yourself, what size do I see this business naturally growing to in the next 5 years? And what roles do I need to fill inside that business? For each position on that org chart, you identify the result that position is responsible for and the standards to which they must deliver it. Then you and your business partners decide which of your names will go into those positions. Your name might be in 4 different positions at this point, but that's normal. Your goal is to start from the lowest level position and build systems to replace yourself in each position. If the lowest level of your company is widget maker, and you put yourself in the widget maker position, you need to develop a reliable and repeatable system that anyone who fills a position can execute and successfully produce a result to the standards you set. Only after you've built a reliable, repeatable system do you move yourself into a higher position, like the widget maker manager, and create a reliable system for that position. You replace yourself with a system by documenting everything you do to achieve the result that you want to the standards you've set. You document your process in an operations manual. An operations manual contains checklists, templates, and scripts. You test your system by following your operations manual exactly as you've written it. Once you've verified that your system produces the results that position is responsible for to the standards you've set, it's time to hire someone to execute your system. To hire someone to execute your system, put the following ad on Craigslist or LinkedIn. Looking for people who believe in our company's vision, who have an open mind and wants to learn new skills. No experience necessary. You see, if you hire someone with experience, they won't fully buy into your system because they'll have already developed the habits of someone else's system. And if your business success relies on hiring experienced people who have their own way of doing things, then the business not only relies on you, it also relies on each of them. If they show up, you succeed. If they don't, you're doomed. It's better to have the success of your company rely on the quality of the systems that you've built for the company. When a company with high-quality systems loses a person, they can quickly be replaced by a wide variety of people who are eager to learn. When taking a systems approach to your business, think of yourself like a writer-director for a Broadway musical. You start by writing the script and the lines for each of the actors. Then you pick up the costumes and design the sets. Then you hire enthusiastic actors who haven't played the roles before. You hand them the script, aka the operations manual, and you ask them to memorize their lines. These actors won't feel like they're part of a bureaucratic system, because the actors know that by mastering their role, they'll be able to put on a performance with the other actors that will wow the audience. And once the actors master their roles, you foster an entrepreneurial spirit in your people. You encourage them to improve upon their roles. Eventually, they come up with better lines. They help improve the set. Once everyone is in the roles that you designed and executing the script you wrote, you can go off to Paris or start writing your next musical, because the musical you just wrote is being performed night after night without you having to be in the theater. That musical is making you money, and it continues to get rave reviews from its audiences. So if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, it will require more than just knowing how to produce a product or service that people want to buy. To be a successful entrepreneur, you need to know how to build systems inside of your business that can produce an extraordinary product without you. In that way, you no longer are trapped by your business because your business is working for you. That was the core message that I get from E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber.
So, that's a good overview, I thought, of kind of the E-Myth. How many of you have actually seen or read the E-Myth before? How many of you actually use the tools inside the E-Myth that you've read before, right? I know it makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference. There's a couple of things in that short video that, you know, kind of raise some eyebrows. They say, you know, don't hire experienced people in certain environments. Of course you have to hire experienced people. In certain environments, sometimes we think, I think about my realtor friends. They often think that they can't give out certain, you know, they can't delegate. There are certain things that the TREC, the agency says that only a realtor can do. And so there's certain things that they shouldn't delegate unless it's to another realtor, but they never think like that. And I've seen a lot of teams built that way in the real estate business, and those teams produce millions of dollars of transactions, more so, because they've hired someone who's gonna do all the data entry work, they've hired a photographer, they've hired all the different team members, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I guess I can delegate some of these things. And it's amazing when you find some realtors who are not doing so well, what they'll do for money, like sit at an open house for you.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be a realtor to sit at an open house in the state of Texas, or at least the realtor has to be present at the home at that time. But boy, a broke realtor will sure sit there for you for $100 and some donuts, you know? And so there's things that we need to just kind of get out of the typical mind frame that we're in and say, well, what can they do? So I've just put together a couple of action items, because as you know, our ultimate goal is not to just talk about, theorize on things, but really kind of take some action on them. And so one of the things that we should look at is establishing an organizational chart as to what that would look like at our goal. So if our goal is to grow our company by 25% this year, what do we need to add to get there? And so we kind of put a who's who and who's who org chart together, and then we have job descriptions, so we can kind of put a microscope on those things, and then create job descriptions and SOPs for those job descriptions on how they're gonna accomplish their tasks. Then we've got a budget. This is the part that many of us don't like to do. We don't like to say to our boss, hey, we're gonna need more money. And we don't like to necessarily say to ourselves, hey, we're gonna have to take some of our profits and invest in this, but these are things that we're working towards. So we should have a goal in mind for that. So I kind of put up a joking org chart here, because oftentimes this is what the org chart is gonna look like when you get started, right? It's the same guy in so many different positions, and then, oh yeah, we got this other guy over here who's gonna help us out, right?
With what? Just
With what, right?
I love that.
It's he's there for moral support.
What's
He's there
your
going,
goal?
man, you're doing a great job, you know, keep running, keep going, 2 more reps, you got this, you know, whatever it is. But yeah, I called him team.
Yeah, that's
So, yeah, so kind of how we go. And so I put together just kind of a basic SOP template that we use, and kind of give you guys an idea of what that's going to look like. And so I'll pass that around real quick, make sure I got it on one page. If you'll just pass those down. And so one of the keys to the SOP, and I think, Jeremy, did you get to see the one we're building for Pocket Protectors? the workflow? Yeah.
No, I haven't seen that.
So the workflow is really cool. So what this does, and this is important because an SOP may have some depth to it. And so in the section, I'm gonna go back here. And so in the section at the top, we just kind of talk about what it is and why it's there. And then when we get to the bottom, we have a specific context here. So this SOP is designed to provide all the necessary information to complete a client onboard process for our firm. And what I put here was an important component because this was something I struggled to give up. I wanted to welcome everyone to our company. I had already typically done the discovery session with them and agreed that we were gonna be a good fit for each other and got them to that stage. But then I also owned what looked like about a 10-hour process here, every new client. And it slowed our growth tremendously because I could only move at the speed of myself and not at the speed of the team. And so this now comprises of 3 different people doing small pieces, sometimes at the same time. And that way it moves along a lot faster. And oh, by the way, I think some of you have gotten a chance to meet Dusty. She's my executive assistant. She's much better at this stuff than I am, which was really also hard to swallow because I thought I was really good at it. And so she did it much faster, and oh, by the way, everything actually showed up in our vault, and everything was in order and looked a lot better. When I went to find stuff that I used to put in there, I had trouble finding where I put it. I know exactly where it's at when Dusty puts it there, and so does Dusty. So if I can't find it, she says it's in the same place that it's supposed to be in. So I find it there. And so we had to get really specific, but one of the other things, and I put some bold and italics and underlines on it, in addition to some of the components like number 1, create a personalized checklist based on discovery session, see checklist attached. So we have a checklist, and on that checklist, there are some non-negotiable. Everyone needs to give us certain data. And then based on whatever it is, through the discovery sessions, I've already added to that checklist in that conversation. And so someone can take that and say, hey, here's all the stuff I need from you. And then they can follow the checklist, because back and forth sometimes is tough. What would typically happen is I would send out the checklist, I would start to receive some information, half of it would be missing, and I would never know it until I needed it about 6 months later when I was looking for it, and I thought it was there, and I felt bad asking them for it again, and Dusty's right on top of it. She's like, hey, 9 of the 10 pieces of data came over, which, oh, by the way, we have a standard email that says, thank you for submitting all of your data. We're now moving to this stage. There's also a second email that if that didn't happen and they only gave us partial data, that goes out, it's automated, and it says, thank you for sending us most of your data. We still need these few pieces. And then there's one that says, hey, don't be a slacker, get us your stuff, right? And so we always laugh because I tell people I'll go to their houses if I have to get it, but we know that there's a point at which we need to go ahead and do that. So there's automations behind the automations. And it's pretty important because then we don't have to think of every scenario every single time. I didn't realize this till the firm was 3, 4 years old that I was sending pretty much the same email over and over again, except I was writing it from scratch every time. I was like, oh my gosh, because someone told me I could probably automate some of that. I'm like, no, there's no way. The message I'm gonna send to Paul is gonna be different than the one I send to Renee. Not that much.
Only that.
Not that much, right? So yeah, maybe a little bit. We make sure that yours doesn't say, hey, we got all your insurance information in, but.
So David, the interesting thing about that, even on iPhone, I don't know if Android does this, but the shortcut keyboard, so you can go on the keyboard,
create phrases.
And I noticed the salespeople that I work with, several hundred of them, they'd have a standard question. I'm like, okay, well, this sounds over and over and over again. So what did I do? I went into keyboard, and you can set up a message that all you need to type in is a couple letters, and the whole text message populates. And it's nice and long, but it's exactly what they're looking for.
And it feels personal.
Yes, I do have to go back and change like that one little thing about it, to say it's for them, but the whole message is identical, and you just set it up once, you put a little shortcut, and I type in those 3 letters, and the whole thing populates, and I hit send. It was the most, I was like, I feel brilliant.
Right. Exactly. Keep sending to all of us.
Do you have a minute after we get done here?
Right.
So Brandon, next week's class you'll be hosting.
Keyboard shortcuts.
Some of those, hey, it's valuable, right?
Yeah.
Also, in today's age, now you can use artificial intelligence.
AI is amazing.
Especially ChatGPT, and it's mostly about like the biggest, most important part when using it is to know how to ask the right questions to do the right things that you're trying to do. And it ultimately puts you in a new mindset where you're not putting so much effort into things, but more so you're putting more effort into asking the right questions.
That's right. That's very true.
It also,
ChatGPT.
it also makes you look smarter than you really are.
A whole lot more.
Now, that's pretty hard.
Well, not you, Mark.
I just lived in cut and shoot for 31 years.
Right, so I'm gonna laugh,
So
because
you
Mark
try
and I
it.
experienced this, we were doing a little bit of a draft for some of his stuff, and we pulled up Jasper, and we threw some stuff out there.
That's crazy.
It is pretty fun, because you throw a couple things out there, and then it just starts typing. Just starts typing, and pretty powerful stuff, so pretty fun. So ultimately, when you build an SOP, it shouldn't just be what someone needs to do. It should have all the tools attached. And when you spend time on that, again, for me, also because I was that time person too, I was like, there's no way I'm gonna have the time to build these templates. Dusty said, well, let me go to your emails and I'll just take them, because you already wrote them.
Yeah.
You just need to put them somewhere where someone else can get them. And I said, oh, right? So, not as smart as I thought, and I didn't need to be because someone else was, right? And so, all good. So traction. One of the important things is that you should know where you're going and what your goals are for this. So I just created some very basic images to be able to show you that, hey, we need to know that this stuff is working so we can keep going through it. Because as we start to think from an investment versus expenses mindset, we need to know that our investment's paying off. How many of you dabble in the stock market a little bit? Right? How many of you make the mistake of looking at it every day or a few hours? Yeah, right? And typically, we're those people, because when I started investing, it was like that. And if I put $100 somewhere, because that was a lot of money, I was like, okay, oh good, it's up to 101. Oh no, it's down to 94. Oh no, it's back up, like this crazy roller coaster, right? How many clients have you served that way, Charlie, in your career? And man, that's a horrible way to think, because there's gonna be some time. And you should set reasonable expectations on this, like we talked about a few slides ago. What is my expectation if I'm hiring someone that's gonna cost me $5,000 a month? What's my break-even point? When will I regenerate that? Keeping in mind, Dusty doesn't generate income for our company. She supports my ability to generate income for our company. I do have some people who do generate income for our company, and so they have to generate income, and they have specific targets, which are a little easier. But Dusty giving me back a certain number of hours a week was what I was after. And once I established that, then I said, okay, great, I'm there. And I had to put some things in place in order to get there. And a lot of it was on me in the first stages of it. Now, like the video showed, if I had to replace some of those components, it's not as hard to replace because the system's there. I might need to tweak it a little bit, but for the most part, it's now just training someone on how to use the system. Financial return on investment, I kind of put a basic equation there. Return on investment equals new revenue over new cost. Just simple. Once you get to zero, then you know you've succeeded with your break-even point. And then what you need to establish is, are you wanting to increase 25% of your business? Then we need to see what that looks like. So we need that to say 1.25 when we divide that out now. So if I got $5,000 in cost and I need $7,500 worth of net income in order to make the goal above and beyond. So now I'm profiting on that investment and I feel a lot better about it. I'm ready to make another investment because I see my first investment paid off. And so if the investment didn't pay off, we've got to do some mirror testing and see if we did everything we said we were going to commit to and gave up the information and responsibilities that those people could work off of and kind of go from there. So then, kind of create some trigger points along the way. So for us, we may hire a bookkeeper, but I know I'm not gonna make more money at that point. If I'm hiring a bookkeeper, it means we either anticipate or have already got all of our bookkeeping team up to a point where they're maxed out. They're filling their 40 hours, there's very little extra time for project work, there's a point there. But then I also know within a few months, my job, because the bookkeepers don't sell, is to fill their position up to enough client income in order to generate their income. And then a few months later, which is a little bit longer, I've got a profit target because I don't just want to make 10% over. I typically want to double or triple what they're making so the metrics in our company make sense to the industry standard. And so that's what we're doing. And then so there's a spot for them and then there's a spot for me. And I've got to go after that sales in order to be able to get to my goal and target. Funding sources. So sometimes money's an issue, right? So one of the last things that we talked about was the ability to pay for this stuff. One of the ways to do it is, of course, to generate some sales. So go out there and get it, and maybe put a little extra time in for a short period of time, knowing that there is a point after that. Then there's a potential to attract angel investors. A lot of this just depends on what you do and you know, what your long-term, short-term plans are. Some of it's cash. You know, we say, okay, we're gonna take some of our cash out of our emergency fund or savings, and we're gonna go into this business and say, okay, we're gonna invest in ourselves, in our company, and we're gonna take some cash out and do something with it. But we can't forget this point, because if we do, and we have a small hiccup, then we say, man, we're gonna be in trouble. We're gonna backtrack on everything, and we're gonna go back to our old habits, and we're just gonna be where we started from, and then we're gonna be frustrated, and then we're also gonna kind of have that Pavlovian issue, where if anyone mentions it ever again, we're gonna be angry about it, and we're saying it doesn't ever work. And so we've gotta, I usually tell people to plan on having at least 90 days worth of that investment cash up front. Put it away somewhere as if it's spent, and pay that person out of that glut of money. When you're funding your payroll, move their money over from a different place because it wasn't in your operating cash. And that way you've given yourself a running room to be able to get this accomplished. And give yourself a little bit of cushion, knowing that if your plan is exactly 90 days for ROI, maybe give yourself 120 days worth of cash, and go from there. All right, so in general, once you've established your business, work through the basic problems associated with every day, it's time to set others up for success in your business. So you own the business, and the business doesn't own you. So I just wanted to kind of open this up. I know, Renee, do you mind talking about your goals that you had for this year as far as time goes?
No, it's so funny that this is our topic, because this is exactly, Pat and I, literally, right before we left the house, I said, you know, I'd like you to pray for me, because I've got some big decisions I'm making in the structure of my business, because I want this thing to be able to operate without me. I'm not in this to do work 14-hour days, you know, we just had this conversation. And so I'm looking at this as we speak. This is exactly what I'm looking at. How do I structure? What does accountability look like? What are the standard operating procedures? What's compensation look like? How does, you know, there's a lot to it, right? There's a lot of tales to get it all figured out.
Yeah, for sure. And ultimately the goal is to, if you do want to go to the office every day of the week, fantastic. That's good. I like coming to work.
Do you look at this as something that you're gonna have to figure out, that you're gonna have to go through the process and do it yourself?
Yes.
I would say there's a balance, right? There's an
Well,
integration.
see, that was gonna be the point to me, is
With
that, you
this
know,
guy.
there's a lot to this.
Yes.
And I don't think most people, I know me, for sure,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to do that without somebody looking over my shoulder or helping me, you know, figure out these processes.
Yeah.
And of course, there's some people who make a living doing them, right?
We've actually, you know, I say we, myself and my team, we've got a lot of this in place already. You know, I think it's just a matter, like
And
standard operating
your company
procedures.
provides a lot of that too.
Right,
So they're
well,
really
yeah,
good
they
at that.
do, and then we've built on that,
That's
so
right.
we're in the process of creating our own agency standard operating procedures manual. We're probably 50% there, you know, a lot of it's been a work in process. It's not like I'm just starting from ground zero, but there's still a lot to think through. And then I am, you know, David helps me out, and I'm consulting with him actually later today on some of this stuff. So I do have some help, but I shouldn't say I'm all on my own, but
I know for
it does feel big.
for
not gonna
us,
lie.
you know, small company creating SOPs, it's vital, just like any other size company. But there was at the beginning, and sometimes still, there's a lot of it that I do have to own myself at first, because I'm the one filling that role until I've replaced myself in it. So I'm creating an SOP for the role I'm currently filling, so that I can hand that off to the person I will hire to fill that role. What's happened every single time is that when I hire that role and I elevate and they come in to fill that up, they touch that SOP and they're like, what are you doing, dude?
Right.
How are you getting this done this way? I'm like, well, you tell me then, you know, fix it, you know, and I let them help me revise it.
Yeah.
Because they know technically that job better than I do, because that's what they're doing with their life. Like, that's not a role I was meant to fill. It's just one I had to fill. So for me, I just had to get over the fact that I can't sweat that stuff. Like, I'm not going to do this perfect the first time, but I have to get this in place, or it will never happen in the first place.
And that's a great part of the message. It doesn't need to be perfect to get started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is going to change. Not if, it will. It will change, yeah, and it will get more refined.
so often what I've seen in the corporate world is, man, they're great at producing good SOPs or good training manuals, but you go there, when it comes to ground level and entry level positions and stuff, you gotta dust them off. Because they don't spend the money or the time to train properly at ground level. Beautiful product, but it just sits there, so.
It's theory.
It's theory, because it's not implemented. They don't look at it as an investment, that, you know, they look at it as, man, that's a cost, and it affects my bonus, you know? But, yeah, that's one of the other biggest things. The thing I'd like to see us do is, this is a lot, I don't know if it's my age or what, but this is a lot to wrap my head around, but it'd be cool to take this meeting right here and break it down and do sections of it. That would, I mean, there's so much here that's so good. Like Charlie said, it's just, that's a lot to wrap your head around, but to take that and break it down, ooh, that's powerful.
Yeah, I'd say the other thing about, that I just learned through function, I didn't recognize it at first, but to Marvin's point, now when we onboard and we hand somebody whatever process we have, I don't present that as the gospel. It's not hard and fast, it's not static. Now some of it, like you said, some of them are non-negotiables, they have to happen, they just have to. But I would try to leave room for input there, and I make that known up front, like, listen, this isn't perfect, I don't think it's perfect, this is the best we have right now, and part of your role is to help us make this better. Not to just, this is part of the job I'm hiring you to do, is to bring that additional value. I need your wisdom. And that creates, I didn't even do it intentionally, but I found it's like the value exchange that creates between me and the people I'm working with is huge.
Oh, yeah.
Because all of a sudden the courage for them to have input without feeling like they're gonna step on toes, it grows and grows and grows. As long as you're willing to listen to it. If you don't listen to it, it won't.
That's right.
Shut them down. Been there too. But yeah, I think a lot of times, to Marvin's point, probably one of those things set dusty is because they tried it, this is it, this is what you have to do, there's no flexibility in this, and we don't want your input. You're my drone, I hired you to do this is right, and you're the robot, now get in the system and get on the assembly line. That doesn't work for
And
people.
there are certain layers where that has to happen. We talked
Parts
about
of it have to,
restaurants.
yeah.
So restaurant
Yeah.
cooks have to produce the same thing,
Yeah.
the same way all the time, where sometimes the service staff might have a little more flexibility in how they present the information.
Right.
So, yeah, for sure.
I think just the point of that is the mistake we can make is to think that the system we have is perfect,
That's right.
and it's not. It can be improved.
Yeah, just going through all of this, you know, Kiyosaki, when he talks about 4 different ways to earn money in America, he talks about you've got, you know, 4 different classes: employees, self-employed, big business owners, and investors, and how you end up in a category. Usually the self-employed people are the ones that own their job. And the reason they did that was they got so frustrated being an employee, it's like, I can do this myself. But the hardest shift was to go from self-employed into having systems in place, and to go from self-employed into a true business owner.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of my backgrounds was going from employment to self-employment, and then kind of getting drawn back into employment again, building a business for someone else. And the reason I did that was, you know, I heard this guy's story, and he was 26 years old when he made the shift from being an employee, corporate employee, to a self-employed. But literally for 15 years, he had capped out at doing about $4 million a year in sales. And he was, in his story, he says, I was trying to figure out, how do I go from being the one-man band to being the conductor of the orchestra? And I've never forgotten that image, because we've all heard a one-man band. It is not quality music. But an orchestra.
Unless you're Ed Sheeran.
Right? But the whole issue was, when I came to know the guy, for 15 years he was capped, and he was the cap.
Right.
Because he had not figured out how to build a team to go through and establish SOPs. but, you know, he was that cap. But anyway, the answer to the question is exactly what you two guys are doing, and you're doing with multiple people, because you have that skill set to develop all of this and have clear.
Or to find people really good at that.
Exactly, and that's what he was saying. He said, I finally found the piece to the puzzle is I didn't have to hire people and then be part of my staff. I could outsource it and develop a team that way.
For sure.
When I met him, he'd been in business 35 years, so the first 15, he had the cap. In the next 20, he went to $2 billion a year in revenue.
That's crazy.
And that's the reason I went to work for the guy, was I wanted to find out what did he learn that made that shift.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, pretty cool stuff.
Barbara.
One thing that I've always tried to do, when I see a quality person working for me, I work, and I've done this in myself, whatever position they're in, if they're quality people, let them know up front, hey, we gotta work together at replacing you, because I got plans for you. So when you move up, there's nothing holding me back from pulling you from here, and you have somebody in place and building your structure. Work, but let them know up front so they're not intimidated by it. Say, man, there's so much more in you, so much more that you have to offer. We need to work on replacing you. And then they all of a sudden start looking around for somebody. Boom.
I like that 4 million in sales for a one-man band.
Yeah.
Right?
Depends on how many hours in the office.
Right.
And how much
it costs.
What's the net profit on it?
Right, for sure.
40%.
Well, time's kind of winding down a little bit, so I hope that this information is beneficial. I'll send the presentation out as well as the SOP sheet, and I'm also gonna send a link to a tool that I just recently learned about, that maybe we'll set up a day where we actually bring a couple folks in who know how to do some of these things, but there's an app called Reclaim, and what the app does is it fills your time. So you create a to-do list, and you kind of code the priorities of your to-do list, and it populates your calendar for you. You can continue to populate your calendar with appointments and things of that nature, but what it does is it really fills your time up, so everything moves from a list to your calendar for you. I was like, when someone told me about it, I was like, we've been talking about this for months now, right? There's a tool up, there's an app for that, right? So I was like, wow, this is pretty cool, right? There's an app for that. So it's called Reclaim, so I'll send a link to that as well. And then I'll see if I can get Levi up this early in the day to maybe come by one day and sit out front and let people set their Reclaim up if that's something they'd like to do, and then maybe other tools like what Brandon was talking about earlier. I mean, these things are just those little things that make such a big difference, and it's kind of that aha moment that, wow, there is the help for that. The other thing I encourage is just what we were talking about. Charlie made a point of it. This is not something you have to do on your own. One of the best parts about our group is there are people in this room that specialize in all of this at some level. And so get an accountability partner, or even a partner on one piece of it that says, hey, Marvin, tell me a little bit more about how you're motivating your employees, because you have some, we'll call them lower pay rate line employees. How are you keeping them motivated? How do you get them to do what they're supposed to do? And what kind of tools are you using so I can benchmark from that? And whatever the case may be, if you're even in an industry and you just need some support on that, we probably have somebody else in that industry who's got some success that we know that we can connect you to. So
I'm gonna need an appointment with Levi.
all right,
We're
all right.
here early.
Yeah.
We have two new attendees. We have
Yes.
Amy, who is Ty's wife, right? Y'all are team members, or is there one of you the team and the other one the CEO? Is that how that works?
Oh, she's
You're the boss?
boss.
Okay.
There wasn't even any hesitation. And she was saying, I'm the boss, and you're going.
And what is your business, Ben?
Loan officers, mortgage loan officers.
Mortgage loan officers, okay, excellent. Is it just the two of you, or do you
It
have
is,
a
it's
group?
just us right now.
Right now, it's just us, yeah.
But as I was watching that, I was writing down, so we have a 5-year plan of getting loan officers underneath us, and the way Nexa has it is we'll make, basis points off of what they sell as well. So I have on here, as soon as we get to 6 loan officers and 3 LOAs, and then have a couple of processors that we can do what we need to do inside an RV on our computer.
You have a timeline for that?
5 years.
5 years.
5 years,
Yeah.
excellent, okay. And then we also have
Amy.
Amy, another Amy. We got, y'all aren't the only 2 Amy's either. Don't we have another Amy that's usually here?
I don't think that was
Okay.
We got a couple of Renee's. Got it, yeah.
2 Renees. Okay, anyway, welcome. How did you find us?
Through Amy.
So Amy.
Which Amy found Amy?
That's
Well, through Tyson too.
Yeah, we went to one of her open houses and met her there and brought her everywhere we go.
I am.
okay. That's right.
Yeah, I was there sitting at the open house for about 4 hours.
I saw you smile about that when you were saying it. I was like, it's gonna be a connection there.
Who are you talking to?
Yeah.
Good, welcome.
Thank
Glad you're here. Glad you're here. All right. What's next week?
I think Jeremy's next week.
Are you up next week or is that Luke?
Sure.
Luke is the week after.
Luke is the week.
No, Thomas is next week.
Oh, that's right, Thomas is
Thomas
next
next
week doing
week.
gas security,
Yeah.
and then the week after we have
Luke Reedus
Luke Reedus.
here talking about, like culture.
Yes, that's awesome.
So Luke founded and runs a nonprofit organization in Conroe called Compassion United. It helps like the homeless, addicted population in the greater Montgomery County area. They've been doing that, what, Charlie, 17 years now, I guess, something like that.
It's an amazing environment.
It's amazing, and a small group of ours got to go help. They do a morning like service and breakfast every day on their facility, which is a property in Conroe called Miracle City. And some of our group got to go help serve breakfast a few months back, and I imagine I kind of had told him to flag me anytime they have an open spot, because surprisingly enough, they don't have a problem finding volunteers to serve that breakfast. It's always full, which is awesome. But when they have open spots, I told him to let me know so we can go do that again, just as a team, as a group, when it's available. So I'll keep you guys posted. But yeah, I'm excited for him to come, and he's a good friend of mine. But I've watched a lot of businesses and organizations with regard to culture, and I can tell you they do it as good, if not better, than everyone I've seen. Their value system is huge to them. And it's very genuine, it's evident throughout, and he's a large part of why that exists, and so he's got, in my mind, a lot of authority to speak to that issue, so I'm excited to get to hear from him on it.
Awesome.
For Amy and Amy, if you guys want to receive the reminder text about this meeting,
You got it
Yes.
already?
have you signed up on the?
I did.
Okay, cool,
We're good.
all right.
Yep.
You'll get it from me, so.
Yeah, 11 o'clock at night, Wednesday.
Hey, it was about 7:30 last night.
Yeah, it was.
If you notice what time Pastor Allen finished last night?
Text went out. Right after prayer.
Hey Brandon, if you can meet with Mike after to automate that.
Thank you, Brandon.
Now you gotta put it in the perspective of an older man though.
Right, yeah.
Thank you,
ChatGPT, please say this like an old guy, right?
I call it old speak.
Old speak.
Right, right.
All right, I'll pray real quick for us, and then we'll fellowship out front. So, Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this time together. Thank you for these awesome people around the table. Lord, we ask that you bless all of them and their businesses and their families. Help them to prosper through the ability to teach others and train others to do the things that are important for their businesses to thrive and to grow, and help us to grow for your kingdom, Lord. One more person in our business is one more person we can touch for you. Lord, we ask that you continue to bless those who couldn't join us today and deliver them back safely to us. All this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
If I might add something, I was trying not to talk because I don't like to talk in front of people, but I don't want to miss an opportunity to give God glory on this, what you're talking about today. I kind of approached this out of necessity and kind of like childlike, we just grew fast as a business, and I had to hire and I had to do things that I wasn't comfortable with, so it was very reliant on God, and as we're all here to keep the spiritual mindset of the business that we're talking about. So I would just add, as I was very prayerful in hiring people, to what Jeremy spoke about just a minute ago, being honest with the people that I'm hiring, like, hey, you're the first one filling this position, here's what I'm expecting, but let's work it out together. Each hire that I've been able to make, and it's all God's glory, has been huge to our growth. Like whenever I look back, it kind of reminds me of You know, Gideon, when God's like helping him pick his army, you know, he can't say, I picked these 300 men, look what I did. It was very much like, you know, so the people that God has set me up with has just, and to see the exponential growth that has been. So I just wanted to add that. I know we all know that, but
Yeah.
again, I don't want to miss an opportunity to give God glory on that. So
That's awesome.
be very prayerful about it, and then take that leap of faith and use God.
Faith has so much to do with it. We have to believe in things we can't see yet,
Yeah.
and we have to incorporate him in the process so that we can maintain that level of faith, because it's hard, man.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for sharing
Thanks,
that.
everybody.
Yeah.